Good morning, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Timothy Lee. I'm a research analyst with Red Cloud Securities. I'm delighted to host a Red Cloud webinar on mineral exploration and development in Central and Western Canada today. We will hear from Sherman Dahl, President and CEO, and Ross McElroy, Chairman of SKRR Exploration. During today's webinar, they will provide an overview and outlook. Then we will take questions. You can submit your questions through the chat box at any time, and we will get to as many as we can. Before we kick things off, first we need to discuss the fine print. During this SKRR webinar, forward-looking statements may be made. I would direct listeners to the company's forward-looking statements disclosure outlined on page 2 of the corporate presentation that can be found on the company's website, skrr.ca. For Red Cloud Securities, Inc., I would highlight that this webinar is for information purposes only. It should not be considered a solicitation or recommendation to buy or sell securities. We note that this call does not consider the particular situation or needs of individual investors. Participants should rely on their own investigation and seek their own professional advice before investing. Please see our most recent research located on the Red Cloud website for specific disclosures pertaining to SKRR. So we have SKRR presenting today. The company has a portfolio of projects in Saskatchewan and recently added a project in British Columbia. The portfolio includes gold, nickel, and polymetallic projects, including projects in the Larange Gold Belt in Saskatchewan and a nickel target in the Ominica Mining District in British Columbia. With that, I now turn it over to Sherman and Ross to update our audience on the company.
Thank you, Tim. It's wonderful to be here. My name is Sherman Dahl. I'm here with our chairman, Ross McElroy. We're here to talk about SKRR exploration. And in an overall summary, Tim has done a good job in talking about our overall goals and objectives in terms of our interest, in particular in Saskatchewan. I speak to something that we've presented on many times is the incredible mineralization, in particular of something that we call the Trans Hudson corridor. The Trans Hudson orogeny is an incredible geological formation, which Ross will most likely allude to in his talks this morning. Extends from the Homestake, the massive Homestake gold deposits in the Dakotas, and then resurfaces into northern Saskatchewan into some significant mineralization, which is evidenced by, in particular, the Flin Flon ore body, which was where the home of and the origination of Hud Bay mining, and also one of the flagship properties for SSR mining, which is the CB and Santoy deposits. In that incredible area where there's a tremendous amount of gold and also very well-known VMS deposits. The Flin Flon ore body, for example, was a significant and continues to be a copper producer in Saskatchewan, which the Trans Hudson corridor hooks over in Saskatchewan into the Snow Lake deposits in Manitoba, and SSR mining, which has got their flagship gold producing property, incidentally in the Flin Flon ore body, also produced something in the neighborhood of around 6 million ounces as a byproduct when they were mining the copper deposit, in particular the 777 deposit. So with this as a backdrop and as an introduction to SKRR, the SK, of course, stands for Saskatchewan, and the R is, the first R is Ron Nedolinsky, and the second R is Ross McElroy. And Ross McElroy and Ron Nedolinsky are two of the really, with Ron Nedolinsky, the pioneers in exploring in Saskatchewan. Initially, Nedolinsky had gone into Saskatchewan looking for uranium, and when 3 Mile Island happened, it really turned Ron's focus into the gold sector, which, Ron, through a number of companies, one that others may have heard of also as Mass Gold, has developed a significant amount of exploration work within Saskatchewan in the Larange Gold Belt and all within this Trans Hudson corridor. So we set off on a mission with Ross McElroy as our chairman, and of course Ross is very well known in particular in the uranium world, but also has had significant experience exploring for gold and base metals globally. And Ross and Ron have both had this longer term vision that Saskatchewan was dramatically underexplored, in particular for gold. Very well known around the world for oil and gas, very well known for potash, very well known for uranium. But when we look at the extensive mineralization, for example, in other very well known geological formations in Canada, like the Abitibi, Saskatchewan has seen like 1/100th of the drilling that we've seen in much larger, more well-established districts. For example, like the Abitibi or the Red Lake area. So we know that it's an absolute fact that it's underexplored for gold, and it's probably underexplored for other base metals such as zinc and nickel. And so SKRR set out a number of years ago to develop a world-class portfolio of gold assets, zinc assets, and more recently, nickel assets. And we built this company over the last couple of years by staking in some cases and also doing joint venture agreements. One that we can speak to, for example, is the Olsen Gold property, which we're very excited about. We've had multiple drill programs and had very good success in the Olsen Gold property in the heart of the Trans Hudson corridor. And our partner that did all the drilling and all the work is Terralogic. Terralogic is very closely linked to a company called Eagle Plains, who's also very active in Saskatchewan, evidenced by their Fisher property, which is one of our neighbors essentially. And the Fisher property had tremendous success and was recently bought out by SSR Mining. So we know there's a tremendous amount of interest in Saskatchewan. We believe that it's going to be the next, major gold producing area, or it certainly has the potential to be the next gold producing area in Canada. And so that's really the overall origination of the company. Over the last year or two, though, we've really been struggling with really tough resource markets. And a lot of the capital has moved up the chain, if you will, to more the producing companies and companies that have resources that they can speak to. SKR has continued to be in the midst of exploration, and as such, we're not as far advanced in terms of a resource. We do have some resources that are not 43-101, and we have an extensive portfolio of high quality assets. But now really the objective is to protect our treasury. We've got a relatively comfortable share structure, about 70 million shares. Our share price has been beaten up significantly into the 2 to 3 cent range. So, we think it's a tremendous opportunity for investors to enter not only the precious metal market, but also the base metal market. And in particular, the more recent acquisitions in both the Father Lake nickel assets, as well as our Dakar Lake assets, which are in northern British Columbia. So I'm going to ask Ross in a couple of minutes to talk about some of those assets so that you can get a sense of how excited he is about Saskatchewan and the Trans Hudson corridor and the opportunities for investors. We're starting to see it's in some ways January is it's like Christmas in January right now for a lot of the junior companies, especially the more advanced ones that are actually starting to put up some discoveries. So our corporate strategy is extremely simple, is we've really trying to protect our treasury. We're sitting on approximately 1.2 million of cash with a decent share structure and a world-class portfolio of exploration properties spanning gold and zinc and nickel. So just to advance the slides here a bit, we've already talked about the cautionary statements, and I've given you an overall general view of SKRR and how excited we are to be in the exploration business and how we're excited to be in the gold and base metal business. And I've also given you a sense of our overall structure. But you can see from this slide, one of our maiden drilling programs where we intersected over 7 meters of 3.4 grams and including 13 grams per ton. And this is typical of Saskatchewan, where you've got, very high grade, gold in Saskatchewan. And of course, the challenge is to get in and to do enough drilling so that you can prepare ultimately a resource. We also had acquired, where we've got 100% owned, as another example, is our Manson Bay property, where there was historical results of 10 meters of 15 grams per ton. And again, we also did drill programs at the Manson Bay property as well. So some very exciting opportunities in Saskatchewan. We all know that, gold is something that's, significantly becoming more interesting to investors. We've got, a world today that is really starting to point to investors having a good exposure to gold as a hedge against all kinds of things. And, not only inflationary pressures that we've seen in the market, but also just the overall state of the world in terms of global stock market exposure for investors. I think it's absolutely critical that investors have some exposure to the gold and precious metals. And more recently, in the last couple of years, into the EV market. When you change transportation, you change absolutely everything. So we strongly believe in exploring for assets like zinc and assets like nickel, which are going to be, obviously, as Robert Friedland said, it's revenge of the miners. And, we're starting to see investors really look at the essence of the old economy. And if you're going to invest in the old economy, and if you're going to own base metals and precious metals, you really should be looking at an area like Saskatchewan. It's constantly ranked as one of the top jurisdictions globally. So I think for investors, if I was to sort of conclude in some overall statements, is, look for companies that have the right people. And SKRR certainly has a proven leadership team. It's a combination of the geological brilliance of guys like Ron Netolinsky and Ross McElroy, evidenced by all the work that they've done over all the years. And both Ron and Ross, I can't even add up probably how many discoveries they've been involved in, but it's a lot. And I think Ron at one point was attributed with at least 4 discoveries, which is typically about 4 more than most of them. And Ross just continues to build his discovery demonstration over the years. So you have to have the right people. The next P, I guess you could say, is you have to have the right projects. And that's where, in the case of SKRR, we're really focused in Saskatchewan, which is underexplored, emerging, and a safe jurisdiction. And then finally, and this slide is probably more at the end, is you have to look at the capital structure when you're going to invest, which is really the price. So you've got you got to have good quality people, you have to have wonderful projects, and you have to pay the right price. Well, the market's handling the price for you because our shares are trading at all-time low. We do have a comfortable treasury, but we really need to step out in a big way in 2023, execute some joint ventures, look at unique ways of raising capital so that we can explore some of these exciting properties. And we are seeing some activity. Mass Gold, one of our neighbors, is in numerous discussions. They do have 1 million ounces of gold on the books in Saskatchewan. We think that those could be catalysts for us because of the world-class portfolio we have. And one of the areas that we find very exciting is our nickel assets, which Ross is very in tune with. And we also have a very interesting zinc asset. So we think that the door is going to start to open and people are going to look for Saskatchewan good quality assets and good quality management teams. And we believe we're well positioned in that way. So here's that overall slide that I was talking about, the Trans Hudson corridor. And you can see the range of properties we have in the heart of Saskatchewan. So with that, I think I'm going to turn it over to Mr. McElroy. And, we're pretty flexible in terms of how we can go back and forth and present. But, I'm pleased to introduce Ross McElroy to talk about some of our properties.
Good. Well, thank you very much, Sherman. Appreciate the introduction. I think before I, start off talking about projects, I do want to reemphasize something that Sherman already mentioned, which is the jurisdiction of Saskatchewan. So not only are you blessed with having geologically some of the most, incredible mining districts. If you think of the Flin Flon Snow Lake area, it's probably the world premier VMS district. And when you look at the even the Athabasca uranium is really associated with the Trans Hudson corridor. So this is a feature that Sherman already alluded to at the beginning, and this just kind of puts it visually in place here. So we have a total of 9 projects in the company, 8 of them focused in Saskatchewan. We have reached out and starting to look in other areas as well. So hence the new nickel project in British Columbia as well. So altogether, the total portfolio, 9 projects. 5 of those projects are essentially precious metal focused, gold primarily. There, in a lot of cases, there's gold and some base metals such as copper associated. Manson Lake, for example, is a good example where you can have high grade gold, also copper as well. So, and then we have projects such as the Watts Lake zinc deposit, which is a historic deposit, one that we have yet to convert over to 43-101 standards. It is a deposit, but eventually we'll put some holes into Watts Lake and be able to convert that over into one that we can talk about under 43-101 compliant rules. And then to the north, there's the nickel projects. Father Lake comes to mind. There's a new one on there, Carp River, which is right in the same district as Father Lake. Very exciting discoveries, high grade nickel, some cobalt as well. And, just to validate, the thesis here, I mean, we are Rio Tinto's now starting to explore rather aggressively in the same area on the same trend of rock that we have our properties on Father Lake and Carp River. So it is something, I think we're certainly in the right district. If we can attract the attentions of Rio Tinto for looking at the same kind of mineralization, I think you're in the right neighborhood, obviously. But here's the Trans Hudson corridor. You look, Sherman already talked about Home State down to the south in South Dakota with 45 million ounce past producing gold deposit. It does show the potential for hosting giant high grade ore bodies, gold ore bodies, and that's really what we're sort of looking for in the case of Olson, where Sherman mentioned we've had several drill campaigns which have only continued to upgrade the project as we move along. Fingal Lake's another project that comes to mind with high grade gold discoveries on it. Just in the interest of trying to be a bit more broad in this discussion, we won't get into too much of the details of what we've had, but I will just show this is the Olson property near the village of Larange. We have had multiple drill campaigns on it. Each one of them have been able to continually upgrade the property. You can see where in the past few years we have been focusing our drilling on the Olson showing, the Point showing, Tuska and Siskin. I mean, there's just a number of excellent target areas now that we've tested with drilling. And you can see on the left side, these are some of the bullets of some of the incredible results that we've seen right off the bat, including, very wide intersections up to almost 20 meters on Olson that, over a gram. But I think what's key here is you have intervals within these wide intersections of very high grade. So we're looking at in particular zones that run up to almost 10 grams per ton over a meter, sometimes a meter and a half. So they do look pretty impressive, and so it is certainly a project that we want to go back to and continue to do some drilling. Irving is an interesting project that we have. When you think of the major miner in the area, SSR Mining, that are operating the CB and Santoy gold deposits, we're neighboring on those grounds. So we have a large land package just to the south of CV Santoy Gold, and then immediately to the north too. We've more recently staked a couple of claims up in that area as well. So this is, CV and Santoy themselves are very large, high grade gold. It's the kind of, the projects that really do put Saskatchewan on the map. Being nearby and looking at exactly the same geology, basically that's wrapping around an intrusive pluton, I think, we should be able to, we're aiming to duplicate the same kind of results, and I think it has the geologic potential to do so. A number of showings have been found on this ground, and it does beg for a lot more advanced exploration here, including drilling, to be able to continue to move those projects forward. Manson is a project that I really quite like. You're a little closer to the Saskatchewan-Manitoba border. We're about 40 kilometers northwest of the town of Flin Flon, which is famous for hosting world-class VMS deposits. So we're right in the same neighborhood. We're just off the highway that does go to Flin Flon. So you have infrastructure. You have a very geologically impressive project with Manson. There's already a gold zone that has been historically drilled and had a resource estimate actually of high grade gold on it that does predate 43-101 implementation of rules. So we can't rely on that as being considered a deposit, but the fact is we can actually drill in that same area, upgrade it to current 43-101 standards, and I think we would have a very impressive gold zone. This is highlighted by historic results, 10 meters at almost, just over 15 grams. It's almost half an ounce of gold over, very impressive widths. So that's the kind of potential that we do see in the Manson Bay gold zone. We have had a drill campaign in there. I guess it was about a year or so ago. We saw some nice results. We tested along strike of the gold zone, and we were able to show that mineralization does continues further to the south than had been illuminated in the past. So it's certainly an area that we're really quite excited about, and it's a large piece of ground with a number of showings on it. So that highlights probably what I'll talk about on the gold side. There are other projects, and you can see I'm just sliding through, but in the interest of time, I'd want to talk a little bit too about our base metal side. So here is a picture of our Father Lake project. This is high-grade nickel, just north of the town of Stony Rapids, so in northern Saskatchewan. You'll see to the southwest of us that Rio Tinto is very active in looking for high-grade nickel as well. So you have attracted the majors to be looking at the same targets that we have. What we have on our Father Lake project, I think the most encouraging place to start is the historic Dumas showing. So there's Dumas A, B, C, and D. So 4 discrete showings along an interesting norite sill. And norite is really the key host for high-grade nickel and cobalt in this type of setting. It's really not unlike what Boise Bay is in Labrador, one of the world largest high-grade nickel cobalt deposits. That's the same kind of geology that we're looking at here on Father Lake, and I think we're off to a good start. You can see drilling and trenching results in Dumas that are up to 2% nickel, and intersections in close to surface drilling up to 2 meters, and in some cases 4 meters. So it really is a target area that we're interested in. We think there is a potential to make high grade or discover high grade nickel cobalt deposits in this area. Not shown on this map, but in the same vicinity, almost where the SKR logo is, just to the east of the Rio Tinto ground, is our newly staked Carp River project as well. So, and which has historic high grade showings on it, and in fact is the trend of norite that basically hosts a Curry Lake, Axis Lake deposits. So they trend onto the ground that we have in Carp River. So we're really quite excited about the nickel portfolio we have in Saskatchewan. Just want to quickly, talking of nickel and keeping to the same theme of commodity, in British Columbia, we've recently joint venture, optioned into the ground of the Nickel Peak showings, and you can see this northern BC, again the right kind of jurisdiction for hosting large, high grade nickel projects. We have a very good ground package in there, and in fact we've even added to it. So we're now looking at over 3,400 hectares of land, nickel prospective land in northern BC as well. I will back up here and just talk briefly about Watts Lake. Watts Lake, now we're heading back to Saskatchewan again, but the commodity this time of interest is zinc, high-grade zinc. This is a historic deposit. Again, predates the 43-101 rules, and so we'll have to do a little bit of work in order to convert that into a modern day deposit that we can refer to, but it is extremely prospective. We're looking at the Boris Lake trend. There's a number of holes already in there, some surface trench results. So this is a zinc mineralized zone that I think it's basically a VMS deposit, and it has some surface trenching. You see the results up to over 20% zinc, and it's also associated with high-grade silver as well. So nearby in trench number 8, we're looking at silver assays up to 184 grams. That's what does that work out to? Almost 5 or so ounces per ton silver. So they're extremely high grade. You're looking at zinc assays, zinc lead of over 20% in some cases. There has been a number of drill holes along there. You've outlined a mineralized trend of over 4.5 kilometers in 4 separate zones. This is all drill tested and drill delineated, wide open, I might add, at depth, because the drilling has been very near surface. The main zone is a continuous mineralization of just over 1 kilometer strike length. Pretty impressive, and certainly a deposit that I think in the making. One that if we put our time and effort into that, I think Watts Lake will certainly become a world-class VMS zinc discovery as well. Probably will leave it at that. Just looking at the timing on the presentation, I really wanted to give you a sense of the portfolio that we have, the 9 projects, and understanding that we really do run a spectrum from high quality precious metal, gold focused projects, and also key base metal, zinc, and nickel properties as well. Sherman, I'll probably hand it back to you, and then I guess we'll look for Q&A.
Yeah, I think the only thing that I would add, Ross, is just to highlight our advisory board, from Brian Skanderbeg to Ron Nedolinsky, Craig Roberts, who was one of the founders of Newfound Gold, Michael Murphy, who was one of the founders of Torex Gold, Mike Halverson, one of the most seasoned investors on the planet in terms of, he's also the chairman of Orezone Gold. Brian's an interesting advisor for us as well because he was involved with Claude Resources, which got bought out by SSR. So we certainly have a stacked team. We have a stacked portfolio of properties, and we're trading at bargain basement prices, and we're looking to somehow work towards capitalizing on all these assets in 2023. Back to you, Tim.
Great. Thank you very much, Sherman and Ross, for the informative presentation. We'll now start the Q&A portion of the webinar. A reminder to everyone on the line, you can submit your questions into the chat box at any time. We already do have a few questions. One, what is the budget for 2023 across the various projects?
I can comment on that. The budget currently for 2023 across all the projects is probably about no more than 300,000, which is just sort of maintenance of the projects. We are exploring again other alternatives and ways to get into to work on some of these properties, but drilling is just not in the cards for us. Nothing that we can talk about until we have some kind of an overall strategy with some kind of a JV or a capital raise. I will say that we're exploring some opportunities to do some smaller work programs. I point to, for example, Nickel North, I think it was, that recently went in and had some grab samples of very high grade nickel. We know we could go into Father Lake and do some grab samples, but we'd like to do something that's a little bit more significant to advance these, and that's really going to be capital market dependent. So relatively low budget for anything right now.
Okay.
We want to really protect our treasury.
Sure. What is the availability of staff and rigs for exploration in northern Saskatchewan?
I'll let Ross comment on that.
Yeah, I can address that. It is fairly busy, but we've got a number. We've been operating in Saskatchewan, through SKRR and different companies that both Sherman and I are involved with. So I think we have a long-standing, good relationship with all of the various service providers and contractors out there. We're a go-to name. They're always looking for quality companies. I'm really not concerned with being able to say get drill rigs, get assemble teams, get able to work. It's really a function of having the capital in which to do the projects, as Sherman mentioned. But I'm pretty sure with the connections we have and with our with all the top service companies in Saskatchewan, I'm pretty sure we would be able to pull the trigger on being able to do exploration work if we have the capital to do so.
Absolutely. One specifically here, what are the next steps for further exploration work at the Ethingo property?
Sure. If you don't mind, I'll address that too. And that's interesting. That's actually one of my pet gold projects. I think it's a real sleeper. It's one we staked, had again with significant amount of historic work on it. In fact, it's probably worth showing the slide, and I think if we can bring that up, I think it would be probably page 15 of the deck. And yeah, well, maybe I can. I'm not sure if I can navigate this or if you can. But the Ethingo, we have done a little bit of. I'll just navigate here to it. It is one that we've again. There's historic work on it. We did a little bit of work, I guess, about a year ago, just tightening up, the geophysics in order to, getting ready for a drill campaign. I think we are drill ready on Ethingo. The area that's most exciting is down in the southern central area where you have the Ethingo Lake main zone with the it's already had some drilling, some pretty exciting results. I think the best of the historic was 7.5 meters at over 11 grams per ton. That looks to be wide open. It's certainly wide open at depth, and something that has never been tested is further along strike. We see indications of fault offset on this zone to the just to the east of the the end of the drilling on the main zone, the historic drilling. It's something I would love to get after. I'm pretty sure that the Thingo main zone is just the scratch, the start of what appears to be a pretty significant ore body. Certainly how it feels like to me. And again, it's a matter of if we had the capital and had the money for it, I'm pretty sure Thingo would be one of our high priority projects to get in and start drill testing, particularly focusing around the main zone. But I think we're drill ready at this stage. The work we've done to date has set us up very well for being able to advance to drill work, and that work would be focused on building and delineating a deposit.
Great. And one interesting question here, but given your portfolio of projects, if you had to choose just one to be the sole focus, which would it be and why?
Well, yeah, I'd probably leave that to Ross.
Okay.
I think I'd probably leave that question to Ross just because it's a more geological target question.
Let me be a bit more broad in that. And I'd say depends which commodity, but if we're after gold, and this is just more of my spidey senses to which ones I think have the potential to turn into a deposit. Gold, I think they're all top quality. I would put my my bet onto a Thingo for the one being able to host the largest maybe high grade deposit of the bunch. Again, as I said, it was kind of I think it's one that we like a lot. It's outside of the area of the other projects, so it's a bit more of an isolated project. But geologically, I really like the potential of a Thingo for gold. Nickel, Father Lake, Carp River, Nickel Peak. I mean, take your pick. They're all excellent projects. Father Lake has high grade nickel on it. Carp River, right on trend with the work that Rio Tinto's doing. Nickel Peak, you're in an exciting nickel area. Zinc, we really only have one project, but it is a deposit for Watts Lake. So it's really the ones we've talked about in this presentation. So that's kind of, it's hard to pick one property, but I do think there are flagships in each commodity that we're looking at.
Great. And I think you had touched on this, and sometimes these things are covered by confidentiality agreements. But are you in any discussions with potential partners to help fund exploration on your projects?
We are. We're all. There's nothing that we can. Obviously, if there's anything public, we're always in some discussions. So yeah, the answer to that would be yes.
Okay. Great. And one little open-ended question here, but what is the long-term strategy for the company? Would you want to, if you have a big discovery, would you want to advance it and eventually become a mining company, or would you look to advance the projects and then sell to a producer?
I think really the overall objective has always been the same: is to have a big discovery. We're continue to be very excited, for example, about Olsen and Manson Bay. These orogenic gold deposits are of that nature. It's, you really do have to find that, you're like I don't know what the saying is. Ross would probably know better than me, but you're always one drill hole away. And, I get excited just listening to Ross talk about a Thingo. Mm-hmm. And so I think what really the overall objective has always been is to go into a not moose pasture mining, but always what Ross would call properties of merit. You look at a Thingo, it's already got 50 some holes. It's been explored by Claude. It's been explored by Newmont. These people are in there exploring for a reason, and they're smart people. So I think the overall goal has always been to get some, ridiculous discovery like the Santoy Gap, which really made Claude Resources, and have the company bought out for, $400 million. I mean, that's really the business that we're in. We've got multiple targets, and we did as much drilling as probably humanly possible for a junior, and then kind of fell into some tougher markets. So I think that overall objective is still the same, is to go and have a significant discovery. We're not interested in probably building a mine. We're interested in having a discovery and advancing the company that way. But would we build a mine? For sure. And if especially with the capability of Ross and other people that are involved in the company, that wouldn't be a crazy thought, but it's not. Our initial objective is to have a significant discovery.
Great. Well, I think that's all the questions we have for today. So I'd like to again thank Sherman and Ross for presenting today. And thanks to everyone on the line for tuning in. Just a reminder, Red Cloud Securities will be back Tuesday afternoon when our webinar series continues with Sky Harbor Resources presenting Tuesday, January 17th at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. Have a great rest of your day and a great weekend.
Thanks so much.